Welcome once again to the Gaming News Canada show presented by Bede Gaming. I'm your host, Steve McAllister. Among the latest bombardment of comings and goings in the businesses of sports betting, gaming, and sports media was news last week that ESPN and Penn Entertainment had come to a mutual agreement to end their 10-year, $1.5 billion deal less than 2 years after launching ESPN Bet. The fingers of the PR folks hitting the send button on that news release were still warm when Ryan Glasspiegel of Front Office Sports reported that a multi-year exclusive deal had been struck between the worldwide leader and DraftKings, which now becomes the official sportsbook and odds provider for ESPN. During an earnings call on the same day as the announcements, Penn CEO Jay Snowden said walking away from ESPN Bet would allow the company to focus on its score bet business in Ontario and at some point Alberta, while also suggesting Penn could invest in retail casinos here in the True North strong and free. It feels like a bit of an about-face from June of this year when Penn announced the laying off of 75 editorial and sales employees from theScore's Toronto offices. For his thoughts on all of this, and if we have time, other matters top of mind in the fast-flowing waters of the gaming industry these days, we welcome back to the podcast John Levy. John, that was a mouthful.
That you summed it up pretty well, Steve. I don't know, man. I don't know what more I have to add other than maybe a little bit of color around this, but crazy times. I mean, since we launched back then to where it is today, you ask the questions, I'll do the answers, some of the answers here, but it's just nuts. And quite frankly, it's from a personal perspective, it's a bit hard to take too, because it was our family, and I'm not just talking about the boys who work with me, but the staff. And you mentioned about 75 of them laid off. They never respected the brand. They never invested in the brand. They never listened to us when we started. I guess it's almost 4 years ago today that we did the deal, right? And probably a year and a half ago today that we all walked out or left. But and now Aaron Labarge has got a score hat on. That's kind of funny. It's kind of weird. It's kind of contradictory to everything else they've been doing. So anyway, we should chat about that for sure. It's a huge lost opportunity, and not only from the past, but also on a go forward basis. But there's some other stuff you want to chat on first, and then we'll get, because you get me started on that. Nothing else is going to.
Yeah, I was going to do that, John, but just you mentioned the color, and listen, there'll be no problem with you giving me color, right? But I want to start there. You mentioned back in 2021 when the Penn acquired you guys, and I want to read you a quote from the press release when the acquisition was completed, and you can probably guess who this quote's from. It is a truly exciting time to join Penn National and collaborate with their team to build a highly innovative and first-of-its-kind sports media and gaming company. There is natural alignment between the two companies, and we are perfectly positioned to capitalize on the growing entertainment opportunities across mobile sports media, sports betting, and online casino. We believe the combined company is well positioned to continue growing our business across North America, including the expected opening of sports betting and iGaming in Ontario.
Listen, we were. I mean, the table was perfectly set for us to succeed. The reason Penn did the deal, a couple of reasons. Number one, they needed a tech platform, which we had spent years and years developing with the best team in the business. And they had just, I think we already had our relationship where we had launched in the States, right? With BetWorks when we launched prior to doing the big deal with Penn, because we had access through Penn. So we got to know each other a little bit. And then there was a Super Bowl where they freaking went down and we were up and it sort of hit them like, my God, if we're going to compete in this industry against all the big guys, we need the right tech and we need the right people. And, oh, by the way, Canada might come along. And these guys are well positioned in Canada. So, and when you think about it at 60,000 feet, the concept and of what Penn did, and they paid us a lot of money for the score, was to sort of position themselves to compete effectively, and they would have had all the elements were there. But almost right as soon as we did the deal, it was kind of like shit fell apart, and it was kind of like, we were the ones who brought them to sort of this party. And, I kind of thought that, what was originally going to be sort of this collaborative effort of, smart people dealing with smart people. And, I'm giving my team credit because of what they did and everything, and them being smart for acquiring us, because, what they were before, and they're Penn Interactive was floundering at the time. They're a casino company. And the concept was, if I'm a casino company, I got to move into this digital landscape. I got to figure it out. Well, they tried to figure it out on their own. That was a disaster. So then they bought us thinking, okay, so now we have the right people. We got the right elements. We got the right assets. Let's go. Unfortunately, it was almost right from the get-go that it was kind of like there were two teams in place. And it was, how do they bring their team into our team and not sort of allow us to continue to do what we were doing. Ontario, we had some leeway because they didn't really give a quite frankly shit about it at the time. And, it was all about getting going in the States. So, but, I can remember one of the first meetings early on, where I put up my hand and made some suggestions as to how we should be doing things. And I was totally shut down. And it was kind of like that was the forerunner for how it was going to be. So, and then we were watching this thing called Barstool fall apart, because that was there when we got there. And there was all this crap and listen, Dave is a very smart guy. He had, and kind of like us, in theory, that was a great acquisition for Penn. Dave's got this huge top of funnel, huge following. All these kids at universities love to bet on sports. Dave loves to bet on sports. But you know what the problem was? There was no management of that asset, and there was no management of Dave. Dave just ran off and did what he did. He sold, what was it called? I called it carbonated piss. The soft drink. Yeah. High Noon. Right. And he did his pizza reviews. There was no sort of concerted effort. And, I remember sitting around and there was no management of that asset. And eventually that just got deteriorated. And you know what happened there? The story continues where ESPN shows up, right? And let me tell you the story about how we found out about ESPN. You would think that we might be involved in sort of how that was going to be brought into the company, into the fold, right? We get a call from Jay saying, we're coming up to Toronto. We want to talk about this. And we had no idea what was coming. Did they sell the company? They were going to fire all of us. I don't know what was coming. We sat in this hotel in Toronto, and he says, we just did a deal with ESPN, a big deal, and Barstool's gone. And we want you guys to have this, sort of wrapped up and converted by, in the next 60 days or 30 days. Convert everything over. We just finished converting onto our platform. But it was just sort of representative of how things were going, right? And I mean, these things don't happen by accident. And then, of course, now we find out that deal's falling apart. So, you had Barstool, no good. You got ESPN, no good, right? I can't imagine. I know what's going to happen with theScore, and it breaks my freaking heart. I mean, they didn't care about it before, and now all of a sudden they care about it, and that's going to be their answer in the U.S., where their market share is like peanuts, like nothing. And in Canada, when we launched, it was probably double digit. I know it was over. We always wanted to get double digits, and that was against all the big guys, 365, DraftKings. We were hanging in there great when we started. I don't know for sure what it is today, but dimes to dollars is half of where it is, and that's the platform that they're going to build from. So, you look at you look at the. You look at this, I don't have to tell you what that is, right. So what's the common element here? What's wrong? And I think everybody knows what's wrong. And it's just, this thing hasn't been managed properly. And that's what everybody says, and under their breath and outside and outwardly now. So hopefully something's going to change at some point, because the deterioration of value, the disrespect for the shareholders, and another comment, then I'll shut up. Like, where's the board of directors here? Right? Like, what fiduciary duties do they have to watch this train wreck happening and not do anything? So, I've been saying it for a long time. Something's got to break. Something's got to give. I think, there are answers to this thing. I don't think it's totally not salvageable yet, but pretty soon it might be.
Hey, John, so the $64 question, or maybe it's a $1 question, is do you and Aubrey, Noah, and Benjie, do you pull a Dave Portnoy and you buy back theScore?
I'd even be willing to do double what Dave did. I'd do it for $2, right? But it's complicated. As you can probably tell, there's no lack of interest on our part. And not just, listen, people are going to say, look, you got paid a lot of money. Shut up, go away. I mean, I think that's what Penn says anytime they hear these podcasts and they hear me talking, and somehow it's saying like, what's Levy doing here? Like, why doesn't he just go away? Well, I'll tell you why I don't go away. Number one, because, there was an opportunity the day they bought us for us to be, and Jay kept talking about, we're going to be a podium player. He hasn't sniffed a podium in his life in with this asset. And there was a possibility. There was a path for us. I don't think we could have taken over from DraftKings, FanDuel, and the big guys, but we could have been right there. In Ontario, the deterioration, the lack of respect for the media. You remember, Steve, our whole idea was it wasn't just a betting company. It's a media company. It's about the interaction. It's about the relationship with the customer. And it's about respecting that and trying to scratch that itch, right? So that really never happened. And all these guys were fired and the marketing team was decimated. And Jesus Christ, we had the best Blue Jay run of our life this year. We did that huge deal. The only big deal we ever did was with the Blue Jays, and we got crap for that too, by the way. But what was what activity took place? Like we would have been all over that if possible, right? The only PR we got, by the way, was when the damn ball got stuck right under the ESPN. But they didn't even publish that. I would have had a picnic with that if it cost our team the World Series. And mouse nuts, nothing. So, I think for sure in Canada, there's an opportunity, if managed properly, to stabilize the patient, stop the bleeding, take some time, infuse the necessary capital, not BS capital, but the necessary capital and I think it's there and it's possible. But the second part of that is, and the reason, I'm sort of not just sort of walking away and trying to figure out another life, is because of the state of the industry. And you and I talked about this yesterday. Like, you've got exchange betting, you've got predictive markets, you've got a regulator who's like, blah, blah, we don't know what to do with this shit. You got the big companies trying to decide, do I buy in? Do I not buy in? I'm not sitting here saying we have the answer or I have the answer, but I love those situations where there's this confusion because, where's it coming from? And I'll tell you where it's coming from. It's coming from the only people that we should respect, and that is the user. If peer-to-peer betting is out there and people want to do it, then let's figure out a way to make it work. If there's exchanges that are operating, if there's micro bets, and I know we want to talk about that. If the micro bets are popular and there's predictive markets out there that you can then don't shit on them and don't just say, well, this is stupid and it's going to hurt me, which is part of what I heard on the call last week on the Penn call. We got to get together and figure out how to deal with this. And you don't have to. Yes, you have to figure out how to deal with this, but why don't you start by you listening to the customer who says, I want this, and then go to the regulator and say, listen, we don't want to swim upstream here. You've already got me. I'm regulated. Let's figure out a way to deal with this and do it properly, because you're not going to stop it. Sports betting is proven. You can't stop sports betting, even with the current stuff that's going on. So, A, we missed. There's an opportunity with the core asset as exists, and B, you got to be in the game to be a part of the game. And what this game is going to look like over the next 5 years, especially with the big digital companies coming in, is going to be mind-blowing.
Hey, John, it's not like we haven't seen this before, right? Like I look at lottery and as an example, and you and I and our younger lives going to Max Milk or 7-Eleven and picking up 649 tickets.
Yep.
The Jays Care Foundation in Game 7 of the World Series, the 50-50 was $25,000 that Eric from Oshawa won $25 million from a 50-50 program that's digital today. Sports betting, you go back to the days where, you and I walked down to the corner, or we sat with our buddies in the living room watching a Leaf game, and we threw $1 on the table and said, hey, Lanny McDonald's going to score the game winning goal to knock out the Islanders. And then, today we're able to bring out our phone and make that same bet. And it's not Lanny McDonald anymore. It's Austin Matthews or whoever. Yeah. And the casino, you and I would get in the car back in the day, and we would drive out to Mohawk or Woodbine or
those days, they didn't have them there. We had to drive to Niagara Falls or up to Rama.
Or Rama, right? Yeah, exactly. And today we see in Ontario. I mean, online casino has been an overwhelming success. So you're right. The customer, it's the old saying, but it's true. The customer's right.
Exactly. And you just gotta, that was kind of why we were successful right from the get-go, right? I mean, it was because, listen, we were excited, we loved the industry, but we didn't think we were smarter than the people we were appealing to. I mean, TSN had a 10-year head start on us when we launched theScore in Canada. And I was in the cable business back then, as you know, and loved freaking TSN because I could raise my rates. People loved it. It was additional programming. We had sports coming out of our yin yang. But when the commission called for new licenses, there was still this, we actually stumbled across headline sports, right? I mean, I don't want to go into the whole story, but it was that digital shit on television with the ticker that never went. Right. And it was like exciting. People, oh my God, this is data, it's information, it's got odds on it. And it really touched the nerve, and it stimulated a type of excitement that the traditional sports networks weren't touching. It was, again, I use that example. You had the guys on with the suit and ties, and we're the experts, and we're telling you what it is. And, the schmoes at home who are paying all the bills said, well, what about my opinion? I don't think Lanny McDonald's going to do. I don't think they should have made this trade, and blah, blah, blah. And we opened it up to that. And in fact, our hosts on air weren't shirt and tie, button down. They were, Sid and Tim before they, originally.
Right. Yep.
Cabby, who knows from Cabby, like this crazy guy running around, right?
Jerry D.
Right. These were guys who couldn't get a job at TSN because they didn't fit the mold. So it was all about respecting a different element within the vertical, which was the consumer. And I think the same thing holds true today, exactly the same thing. And, you got to be in the game to sort of be a part of the game. And that's why, in the back of my mind, if there's opportunities, if somebody calls me, I might answer the phone and say, let's talk about this, because who knows where it's going. And, I think the other beauty of how we operated was we never sort of thought that we knew where it was going, but we knew enough to say, we don't know today, and we're going to pay attention, and we're going to invest and get there if we can figure it out.
Hey, John, do you have a theory on why things failed with ESPN Bet and this partnership between Penn and ESPN?
I do. I mean, I think it really was a consistent behavior or lack of behavior, quite honestly, on the part of Penn. I mean, I think they thought that there's no bigger brand than ESPN, right? I mean, whatever you think, old school, new school, people still love ESPN. They're all over the place. They have a huge footprint. But I think what happened was ESPN, they did a great deal for ESPN. I'm not sure I would have done that deal if I was asked in advance. And ESPN had a lot of, the Disney/ESPN had a lot of other issues that they were dealing with, and it just wasn't a priority for them. And it wasn't sort of pushed by Penn. I mean, I think, they brought over that one individual, they brought over this guy, Aaron LaBarge, and everybody got excited saying, oh, we got an ESPN guy coming from Disney. Oh my God, this must be a real thing. And then, it does nothing, nothing really happened. And, 2 days ago, he puts a score hat on, like give me a break. I honestly think that the core to the problem here is the management at Penn really has had difficulty throughout the whole process in dealing with the acquisitions that they made, with the people, the identity, and I think part of it, honestly, is it's a casino company. They really had no idea what they were doing in the digital landscape. And it proved itself over and over and over again. Do they have a good casino operation? Yeah, they've got like 40, I don't know how many properties, 35, 40 properties. Okay. They're making money. Guess what? If you just put a value on those properties, the market cap of this company would be probably 50% higher than what it is today. When the stock was trading down around $13, $12, it was the market cap was what they paid us. Crazy, right? Now it's back up, what, $14, $15. But, if you and I think there's a path here. I mean, if you just sort of segregated it again, let the casino company be the casino company, nuke the interactive stuff, and let the score go where it should go, wherever that may be. I think there's a way to save this thing, but it ain't going to happen unless somebody comes in over the top and realigns the whole positioning of the company. At least these are my opinions. I'm sure they're the opinions of a lot of people out there. And for the life of me, I can't understand, other than maybe H.G. Vora, which is the only activist that have shown up and put up their hand and say something smells in Denmark here. But even them, what are they waiting for? They've, by the time they get their act together and enough directors on Penn, which is what they're trying to do, right? They got 2 on, they want 1 more. By the time they get it done, there's not going to be anything left to save. So it's a mystery. Somebody should write a paper on this. Somebody should do a business school paper on, I was going to say the rise and fall of Penn. I don't know what the rise was, but I certainly know what the fall was.
Yeah. Like, do you see Penn, to your point, John, do you see Penn getting out of the digital gaming business entirely at some point and just going back to its roots of running casinos?
Newsflash. They're out of it now. It's dead. Just nobody's told them. I mean, listen, look, and the other dirty little secret about this whole digital world is everybody talks about, sports betting and that. The real money is made on the iGaming and the digital and the iCasino stuff. So, is there a path forward for them with their casinos and then moving into the iGaming space if it's done properly? I think that's probably a business. But outside of that, in the sports world or in the media world or anything like that, they're a fish out of water. And I don't think there's any resolve to that until something major happens. And I am shocked that it hasn't happened before now.
Ready to accelerate your digital growth? Bede Gaming delivers a market-leading platform with best-in-class products driven by secure, cutting-edge technology. With an open API platform, robust integration suite, and unlimited configurability, you can achieve the ultimate end-to-end customization for your iGaming ambitions. Bede Gaming is your partner for success. Get in touch at bedegaming.com. I have to believe that John Levy 25 years ago, he would have been licking his lips at an opportunity to have a media company and bring a sports book, a digital sports book into play, and the kind of fun that you could have had with that.
Listen, when they did the deal with ESPN, you know what I mean? Like, and I was out of it, right? And they weren't listening to me. They didn't talk to, but I got home and I said, I've been slamming those guys my whole life, like TSN, ESPN. That's not us. We're not shirt and tie. Mm-hmm. And then when it got that close that if it was me, I say, holy shit, can you imagine what we could do together if I could get in a room with some of the creative people there? Because, Aubrey and Noah and Benjie, I never crossed over. I was just 1 foot out the door at the time, and they were still there trying to figure out how to incorporate ESPN into the, Barstool gone, ESPN on, right? So, and we're going to do the 30 days. No, you're not going to do it 30. But, it would have been fun. It would. And then what an embarrassment. What a freaking embarrassment. They cut the deal, and the same day ESPN says, what? Who did they do a deal with? Right? It's like,
yeah, that to me, and again, maybe you I mentioned Ryan Glass-Steagall, maybe you credit the reporter for breaking that story, but it's almost like a double kick in the gut for Penn that you've admitted the ESPN Bet was a failed project, and not only that, but now ESPN's coming together with one of your competitors.
The biggest
yes.
competitor, right? Like, how do you like You know, you just got to. If I were them, I'd sort of, scoot away, smirk away. Oh, sorry. See you later. Somebody else come in here and try and make this work. So, anyway, listen. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I just don't think status quo is viable. I haven't thought that for a while, and hopefully at some point somebody comes in and tries to revive this thing.
Do you take Jay Snowden at his word when he talks about investing in Ontario and Alberta and perhaps getting into retail casino in Canada? Do you think that he and the rest of the executive understand what's going on in Canada, and that do they still believe in the theScore brand here?
I don't know how to politely say this, but no. I don't think he knows where Alberta is. Let alone where Ontario is. Ask me how many times they came up when they owned us. Listen, Jay's good at sort of, and maybe that's why it survived so long. He cut he's cut hundreds of people out of the staff here. Listen, I still have people who work there that know me, and I mean, it was our family, right? People are walking around like in shock. They don't know what to do. And listen, nobody has the balls to say anything because they're still getting a paycheck. And as long as the paychecks don't bounce, I guess, I haven't set up another business yet for them to come and work for me. Right. I'm not saying I would or I did, but they're getting paid, right? So, but it's misery. It's misery. And we've seen it time and time and time again. And, there was a town hall last week or a couple of weeks ago, and it was like people just like shaking their heads. They just don't understand. There's no leadership. There's no North Star. There's no love. There's no love of the product. And it's hard. It's embarrassing. And it's especially hard for them. And I really do feel for them because there are still some really good, great people working at that place. And they've got, they're just like they're sitting on they're on the deck of the Titanic, right? And it's like, help me. Somebody freaking help me. And, they can't stand up. They can't say anything. The executive team are all, yes, sir, Jay, sir, everything. Nobody says shit anytime. But if you probably put truth serum in them and you got them in a private room, you'd probably hear the same stuff I'm telling you. Like, what the hell's going on here? I know these people. They're not dummies. I worked with them, the executive team. They're not idiots, but it's just a failed mission. And I don't feel bad for them because they're all getting paid really well. Right. All of them. What I do feel bad for is the other team and the shareholders. That's what I feel bad for.
Hey, you mentioned the Blue Jays earlier, John, and it got me thinking as I was getting ready for this interview, on the partnership side. And again, I'm trying to remember if it was Aubrey or Benjie that did those deals, but not just the Blue Jays deal, but, you do that deal with Golf Canada in the early days, and Nick Taylor wins the RBC Canadian Open in 2023, and one of what will be one of the greatest sports moments of our respective lifetimes. And we've been around the block more than a few times. And then Brooke Henderson, and I can't remember the scores deal would have included this year's CKPC Canadian Open Mississauga, but Brooke Henderson wins her second Canadian Open title. One of the greatest sporting moments in 2025 for Canadian sports fans. So, and you're right, when that Addison Barger ball lodges in the left center field wall in game 6, you look above the ball and there's the score banner.
I mean, you couldn't buy that advertising, right? And not only that. I mean, when the World Series comes to town, they take over everything inside first base, third base line. So we had a lot of signage in there as well, but that all goes to the national and MLB. So, but when and again, we spent hours figuring out where to put our signage because this was the biggest deal we ever did in terms of branding, right? The only big deal we ever did. And we loved it because it's the Jays, it's the national team, it's baseball, it's there all season. They were great partners. They were really supportive. Aubrey and our team and our social and marketing team worked really hard with them. And, we went on trips with them. It was terrific. And then the only thing we didn't get is we wanted to get the sports book at the Rogers Center, right? And we had problems with sort of regulations, and it was just too difficult. Plus, they had the plans of redoing the whole place, right? Which they've done, and I think they've done a beautiful job, right?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
So we get our stuff placed, and now they're ripping the outfield away, and now we got to renegotiate where our betting stuff is, and third base, and the outfield. And again, I think our guys, Aubrey and our team, did a great job of positioning it. And then we get a team that's like on freaking fire this year, like, and you know. You want to take a brand and move it into the States. How about a little foresight? I mean, this team has been hot since the whole season. We whipped the Yankees, in the series to halfway through the season. You want to start to promote a brand. Here you are. You're $1 late. What's the expression? Whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's stuff lines up. Stuff lines up, and you got to take advantage of it. And I think the animals are out of the barn right now, so it's going to be tough to get them back.
Hey, John, I get you to put on your sports media hat for this one, and again, this it's still a topic of conversation. That the attempts to integrate sports betting content into sports programming. There's still a debate about advertising around sports properties, and again, we see the federal government's trying to get involved now. We mentioned on the podcast recently that Denmark just imposed a gambling ban on in-play betting during matches on television. What have you seen, or are there things that you would have fixed? Again, in your days at theScore, and I'm sure theScore would have had, well, you probably would have been theScore Bet, would have been your partner. But are there things that you would do differently than what the sports betting companies have done? And not just the sports betting companies, but their media partners.
Well, yeah, number one, I think, there's the obvious stuff like, responsible gaming, right? For example. Everybody talks about responsible gaming, but nobody really tries to make it work, right? I mean, it's, we're talking about addiction here, right? We're talking about serious shit. And if we were there and we were still involved, I think we would have taken a different approach to how to really become helpful and not just run, responsible gaming police here, blah, 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 blah. In the meantime, you're promoting the shit out of everything to try to get people to do what they're doing. So I think there was a more honest approach to that we could have taken in supporting different things and dealing with it differently. Number one. Having said that, but I when I think about all that's happening with the backlash about sports betting, right, that we're facing right now, the MLB just yesterday said $200 maximum for for a micro bet for per pitch or whatever it is.
Right.
Again, you're not going to stop micro betting. Let's be real here. This gets back to what I said before, right? Banning it is the stupidest thing you could ever do, because you know what's going to happen? It's going to go underground again, offshore, dark. People are going to provide it, and that's one thing I'll say about the regulated market that we don't do a good enough job talking about. When they talk about these ball players, and I don't understand this shit, like the NBA scandal and the MLB scandal that's going on. Like, these guys are making millions and billions of dollars, and they're fixing games for a couple $100,000. Something smells in Denmark here. I don't know what it is. Is it just the love of doing something illegal? Is it something? It's not this. It can't be this for them. I have the rumors about the mob being involved again. Well, that would be pretty serious, because, I my whole career is be able to pitch it, throw a no-hitter, and the guy fucking breaks my arm. I guess I can't pitch anymore. So that's a bit of a problem. Yes. But I come back to the simple thing that we argued when we got involved in trying to convince the Ontario government that this was a good idea, and the federal government and the Ontario government. At least you've got us as your protectors. In other words, it's happening anyway. Can you imagine this stuff if you didn't have companies like ours to point to? I mean, who are you going to take to court? like nobody gives a damn if you don't have this sort of these legitimate companies who are either public or private and regulated. And is there more that these companies could be doing in the micro markets, for example? Absolutely. Could we have imposed those limits ourselves? Absolutely. Could the bottom line is, though, we see, and I remember this, we see everything. We see every bet. So if there is a lot of action on some stupid midweek game where some pitcher who's like between two teams that don't give a shit, and all of a sudden where there's only like $5,000 or $10,000 bet on that type of product, all of a sudden there's 100,000 or 200,000. We see it. We see it. And we should be the whistleblowers, and maybe we were in this case. So you got a better shot of dealing with that crap with A, companies that should be responsible, and B, with the technologies in place. Especially now with all the micro betting that's coming up. So I think we relax, we being the industry. I think we just kept our eyes on what was apparently the prize, which was getting as much volume as we could, and NGR and GGR, and probably not watching it as much because all the money was coming from the iGaming side, to be quite honest. I think we could have done more. And if we were there, we would have tried to do more for sure.
Yeah. And for the people who say that online gaming is too accessible, I mean, yeah, you can say that, but if you get rid of regulated markets, that's not going to change. I mean, I get ads on my Instagram feed every night of the week of sports books and casinos I've never heard of.
Correct.
They aren't legal, they aren't regulated, and that's not going to stop.
Correct. So work with, I think the regulated approach is absolutely the proper approach, but we got to be smarter about it, and we got a lot of smart people in this industry. I mean, look at the stuff we're turning out, right? So dedicate some of them to say, okay, how do we deal with this? How do we prevent this? That's your job. I want you to build a team inside these big companies of 10 people to assure that if we smell something and it looks offside, that we're going to be able to deal with it, because our freaking reputation and our stock price and everything is on the line. And I don't know that we've done that. Maybe we have, and I'm just not aware of it. But I if we are, then these things should be caught more regularly.
Hey, John, last question: is there anything else that you're following in the industry right now that kind of excites you, or you want to grab your 9-iron out of your bag and knock it against your head a few times?
Yeah, that's probably better than me trying to get it on the green. But as you can see, I'm still in love with the industry. I've made a few little investments in some of the micro stuff, some really smart guys, some guys out of the States. And I've always liked the peer-to-peer stuff as well. I mean, the betting between people, because, we saw that when we did chat in our app, right? It freaking blew up. And what were people talking about? Exactly what you said. Who do you like tonight? Oh, I don't believe the spread's 3.5. It should be 3. You want to, let's bet a coffee. Let's bet, and they're literally betting back and forth on our app to just without us, right? So, that's the stuff we know today. And then layer in some of the bigger shit, like what is AI going to do to this vertical? And look at the people that are getting involved, the companies, all the big digital companies that have been sort of, the Facebooks and everybody who've been dabbling, and now they're going after it in spades. We discussed that earlier. So I think the whole thing over the next 5 to 10 years is going to big evolution and revolution within the whole sports media business. And a lot of the old guys who own these teams and own the leagues are going to, they're going to sell for a lot, but I think there's going to be a whole new regime and world that's out there that's going to create huge opportunities. Because as I said before, I mean, the two things that are never going away is people are always going to love sports, and they're always going to bet on sports. And the trick is just for us to figure out what those 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 10-year-olds, when they grow up, how they're going to interact with it. So that's what's fun.
Yeah, and just quickly, John, with the Blue Jays, that World Series run, I know it brought back a lot of memories for me as a baseball writer a very young baseball writer in 1993, but I'm sure the same with you. There must be some great memories from those days at theScore.
Crazy. Yeah, I remember, even the 92, 93, one of my kids, Aubrey, was like a little piss ass, and he was in playing hockey, and we were in frickin' Orangeville, right? When Carter hit the home run. So the fathers are sitting in this stupid little motel with TV or something. Well, and then, in 2000, I guess the Subway Series, right? We had, I think that's when we had Hardcore Sports Radio. That's when we were doing the Blue Jay. Our first deal with the Blue Jays, we were doing the broadcast, right? So that was a shitload of fun, right? And we had the Subway Series. So our guys were there. So we were in New York doing that one. And listen, but a lot of people say baseball is pretty boring during the season. And I got to admit, to some degrees, it's a long season. And if your team's not in it, you got to be a real fan and love the game. But boy, oh boy, when they're in it, and we had the run like we had this year. And truth, I'm sick that we lost. We should have won a million ways to Sunday, 1 out, 3-2, bottom of the ninth, worst hitter on the team. And the guy fricking puts it over. Thank God he didn't put it over to score bet sign, but he and then, and all the other shenanigans that happened after that wouldn't have happened if we just fucking closed it off right then and there. And we didn't. But I can't remember as being involved or as excited and exhausted. And I'm not just talking about the 18-inning game. I'm talking about living and dying on every pitch. It was an experience you'll never forget. Never forget. It would have been nice to win. I wish I would have won for my kids, my grandkids, for me. I'm not sure how many more shots we're going to get like that, but you'll never forget it. And it was amazing.
Yeah, I think it's impossible.
We were their freaking partners. We were their partners, for God's sakes. Give me.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to get rid of the sports journalist completely. But I think for me, it was just fun to watch a really good series. Watch a team that I'm a traditionalist. Watch a team that plays baseball the correct way, and then watching a whole country embrace the team. And I think that's something that's not lost on ownership.
Yeah, Steve, that's something that I should have mentioned, and I didn't. There's a lot of issues that we're dealing with, right? In Canada, we're facing the sort of Jewish issue of Israel and anti-Semitism, all this sort of shit. We don't want to get into all that, but that's obviously taken up a lot of my time now as well, trying to deal with that, try to sort of get things back to a situation where people can live and go to school and not worry about hatred and fear and violence and all that sort of shit. But, it was fun because for the last number of weeks across, I would say, all of North America, you saw it in Toronto, right? You saw it all across Canada, but you probably saw it all across the US, especially like in LA and Toronto. Like, people were coming together. It's really what fucking sports does. I mean, you're high-fiving people you never met. You're sitting beside people. You're sitting in seats you never sat in before. You're hugging, you're crying, you're doing whatever. And it sounds bullshitty, but it was really true. With it was such a relief not to worry about that stuff for a couple of weeks, right? And have people come together like that and just love the excitement around sport and winning and the disappointment around losing. But that was it. It was not about where you're from, who are you, what color's your skin, what's your background, what are you protesting today? That bullshit, which is eating us apart, seemed to disappear for a period of time. So there's a lesson there too, I think.
Yeah, really restored your faith in mankind watching those 3 games in Los Angeles and seeing people in Blue Jays and Dodgers jerseys high-fiving each other after just, the most possible drama you can have in games, like 18 innings and literally sitting on every pitch. And that was one of the big takeaways for me, John, is watching, and kudos to Sportsnet for their coverage of the series. Yeah. But seeing those fans after the games, and to your point, didn't matter what color, race, religion, who they cheered for, whatever. It was just people coming together and enjoying a sporting event, and obviously cherishing being part of that moment. And if that sounds sappy, but so be it. But I think we need more of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, a little, I went to game 5, right? I actually went just for one of my kids was in Florida, Aubrey, so he went across and I went across, and I'd never been to Dodger Stadium, so it was like, I'm gonna go, and it was the experience of a lifetime. Driving to the stadium was not an experience of a lifetime.
Terrible.
It was an hour and a half to get to the bloody place, and you wanted to get there to experience. And then it was like, once you got out of the parking lot, it was 20 minutes to get back to the hotel. But the stadium is magnificent. The sunset, the people. Like, I'm sitting surrounded. I wasn't just right by first base side where all the Blue Jays fans were and the dugout was, but I was sort of off the side a bit, and surrounded by Dodger. But it was so much fun. I mean, it was like, my game. I didn't have my first beer, and we got home run number 1, home run number 2, right?
Right.
It was so amazing. But anyway, it was a great all around experience, and I think it really stands for how important sports can be, not just sports betting, but sports can be. And that's why, it's always going to be around. It should always be around.
Let's leave it there. That's John Levy, the man behind Headline Sports /Hardcore Sports /theScore Bet. Hey, John, really appreciate you coming on. And as always, you don't pull any punches. And I'm pretty sure this is the first Gaming News Canada show where we've had William Shakespeare referenced twice. So mark that one down.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much. And we'll see how things unfold. And let's keep talking. And hopefully there's a lot of excitement in the future for sure.
Yep. Thanks, John.
Okay.
That's it for this episode of the Gaming News Canada show presented by Bede Gaming. As always, you can find us on all the podcast apps, on Substack at gamingnewscanada.ca, and also on the Gaming News Canada YouTube channel. Thanks again to John Levy for joining us today, and we will see everybody again very soon.